welcome to In the UMAverse, a production of Urban Media Arts. This episode is entitled Voices on Disability. First, to just start with some definitions, the Centers on Disease Control defines disability is any condition of the body or the mind that makes it more difficult for the person to do certain activities and to interact with the world around them. The CDC also states that as of this time, 1 in 4 adults identifies as a person with a disability. Today's topic is navigating the world with a disability, challenges, choices, and stories. Each one of the panelists is a person who identifies as a person with a disability, and I'd really like to emphasize that disability is a group that anybody can join at any time as we age, as we move through life, at birth, or close to our ends. I'm your host, Kelli Collomb, and I'm an educator, an advocate, and a person living with multiple disabilities. You might think that having one leg is the disability that causes me the most grief, but really it's the things that you can't see, all of the things that come along with that. I'm a cancer survivor multiple times, and you might see me going around Malden on my scooter. I'd like to introduce Aylat Lifshitz.
Hi, I'm Aylat, and I am a special educator, and I work with transition age young adults, but I myself am a cancer survivor and have been dealing with becoming disabled later on in life and learning to live with a new normal and a new body after that.
Kobena?
And my name is Kobena Bonney. I am a program coordinator at the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. That's where I work, but I'm also a leader in the African community in Massachusetts. So I'm involved in a number of different organizations that promote the welfare, well-being of the African community in Massachusetts.
My name is James Norris, and I am the founder and executive director of Handicapable Fitness, which is a Boston-based nonprofit, and I also do motivational speaking along with children's writing.
Thank you so much. It's great to have such a good group of panelists. One of the questions I'd like to start off talking about is, what are some of the struggles that you encounter in your daily life, possibly around Malden or in the state of Massachusetts, that people may not be thinking about?
I think I'll go first. So for me, a big struggle that a lot of people don't realize is I use the ride, run by the MBTA or contracted out by the MBTA. And the struggle that comes along with that is my days have to be planned out 24 hours in advance. So if I'm going to be going out to dinner, I have to say to the group of people that I'm with, okay, well, what time do you want me at the restaurant? What time do you want me to be picked up? Sometimes they show up late, or sometimes not even at all. So it's kind of really a crapshoot of whether or not I'm going to get a ride home or get a ride there. And if I don't use the ride, then I have to rely on family members or friends, and you know, sometimes I feel like I'm putting them out even though I'm really not. But that's a huge struggle of mine.
And it requires so much extra time and planning and effort that people just don't see that sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I would say that something that I think people don't necessarily think about is the extra time that it takes to recover from different things, whether that's the extra time it takes to recover from a simple illness, to the extra time it takes to recover from, you know, going to a social outing, whether it's, you know, a 1 to 2 hour hangout and going to dinner, and then the fatigue and the ramifications of you know, after that, how long does it take to physically recover? I think that's a big thing that I struggle with. That I think for those with disabilities that might not be visible to other people, they might not necessarily think about.
I guess I'll picking up from where you left off, because that's what I was also thinking about, invisible disabilities. So it's very easy to see someone who has a visible disability and say, okay, this person has this or that disability. But when people amongst us have disabilities that are not visible, people don't know, and sometimes because they don't know, they treat people ways that are not very helpful. And occasionally when people with invisible disabilities make their disability known, people also question that claim. So like, well, I can't see your disability, therefore, how am I supposed to believe you, right? And that sometimes causes problems for, especially the person with a disability. So I'm hoping that people would keep an open mind and not make assumptions about who's disabled and who's not. It's up to the individual. If someone says, I have a disability, you should take them at their word. No one wants to walk around claiming they are disabled if they are not. So that's one thing that sometimes can cause problems, and I'm hoping that the public would be sort of open-minded and not question people because they can see the disability.
Thank you. And there's a couple of things I want to make sure that we circle back to on that, the invisible versus the visible disability and assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions that are made about what a disability is, a lot of negative connotations with that, which causes a lot of struggle. And I know, Aylat, we've talked a little bit about people questioning when you were trying to get an accommodation. Would you like to share a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were speaking, Kobena. That I recently went to a concert that was a standing room only concert, and I had requested accommodations prior to about needing a seat, since I can't stand for that long a time, and there was a lot of difficulty in even getting information if that accommodation was possible. And I decided, you know what, I really want to go, and I can't stop this, I can't stop myself from going because of the possibility of not getting an accommodation. That's not okay. So I went, and then I, along with someone else who I didn't go with but also had a disability, was questioned. We were asked, well, what is your disability? Can you prove that you're disabled? And that was really upsetting and frustrating, because not only is that against the law to be asking those kinds of questions, but it's really invalidating, and then takes away from the experience of going to enjoy a concert.
It feeds into the point that Kobena was just saying, to take people at their word, because some people aren't comfortable opening up about their disability. So it's you really have to take them at their word, because if they do that to the wrong person, they might not be as strong as you to say, you know what, I really want to go to this concert, I really want to go to this sporting event. And next thing you know, they're staying home. And I think one of the biggest things with that is, in the handicapped community, people really struggle sometimes with socializing. That is a huge thing. Isolation is a huge thing. So I applaud you for doing what you wanted to do and kind of putting up with that, even though you shouldn't have had to.
So one of the struggles that I face on a daily basis, I've shared that I probably have a few decades on a couple of you, as that level of energy that it takes to be able to socialize, to go out every day and deal with repeated insults, whether they're meant or they're not meant. So I'm usually driving around in my scooter. I drive by, there's a stair. I can't get in. And that stair to me is saying, you are not welcome. We didn't even think about you. when we were building, when we were making this building. We didn't think of anybody in a wheelchair. We didn't care to think about anybody who has a physical disability or a sensory disability in accessing this establishment. But when I'm going to different places, the thing that I think cuts the deepest is the eye roll. And people have really learned how to control that. It might not be a full on, but you see the quick dart to the side, or you see the quick look, or the quick tilt of the head. It means this is a big bother to me, and this is a big pain. So when I'm asking for a ramp, or I'm asking if somebody could help let me in, or if somebody might be able to assist me in some way, one of the things that's gone on over years for me that makes me very tired is that quick. People don't think you notice it. It might be a pause in a sentence or tilt of the head, but I'm like, I see you, and I see that I'm annoying you by asking to enter your establishment or your building.
So I'm curious, when that happens, how do you circumvent that? How do you approach that?
Good question. I think, and I'd be curious to see what other people have to say, but sometimes I don't have the energy to deal with it, and sometimes I might just go away because I'm tired and I don't feel like educating people. Sometimes I might be angry, and get the angry person in the wheelchair. Other times I might take the time to talk to people and educate them. So I think a lot of it goes back to what Aylat was talking about earlier, energy levels, where I am, and so it depends on my mood.
Yeah, which is a good point, because I mean, after all, we are human, and on one occasion you may feel like fighting, advocating. Some other time it's like, no, this is going to take too much energy. So then you react differently. But I mean, we all like to think that society has come a long way such that something like that, I mean, physical access to a business shouldn't be an issue, but it is. And so the question then becomes, how do we fix it? I mean, businesses, we all are members of the community. We have money to spend. Businesses are there to make money. So you would think that they would want to make their, places, business establishments accessible to everyone, because if someone cannot get in because of that physical barrier, well, if you are lucky, they just go away, they don't say anything. But what if they tell their friends and family, and then next time a whole host of other people don't come to your business because of that, So there's a downside to it. So I'm hoping that people who are businesses, who have other establishments will be open. Well, there's a legal part to it, okay? I don't want to bring it up, but at least there's a law, and they are supposed to make their businesses accessible. But besides, you're also there to make money, and we all have money to spend. So look at it from that point of view, the economics of it.
I love that. And I think one other thing to really add on to that is somebody here, I forget who it was, asked, how can we change that? And I think a big thing is the Americans with Disabilities Act is a huge piece of getting in the rights that everybody deserves, right? But forgive me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 30 years old.
1990.
Or
what? 91.
So,
90.
So it's pretty old, right?
Yeah.
So it's written in a certain way to where oftentimes so many people think like, okay, the ADA just pertains to people in wheelchairs, but it doesn't. They don't take into consideration a visually impaired person or a blind person or a deaf person, or just because you're to code in one area doesn't mean that is one size fits all, so to speak.
It's true. What would you like people to know that you need from them, or businesses or other establishments? What is it that you need?
Just access, because like Kobena said, I'm not asking you to rebuild your business, but work with me.
Right.
If your business isn't accessible, ask me questions of, okay, it's not accessible, I apologize, but what can I do for you? If it's a restaurant, right, and I can't get in there, and I happen to really like your food because I see it on Phantom Gourmet, offer to bring my food out to me. You know, really try to go, not out of your way, but just treat me like a human, right? And as far as like the everyday population, I don't need anything extra than somebody else. I just need to be seen, I need to be heard, and I need to know that in some form or fashion I'm appreciated. Because like Kobena said, we all have money to spend, and you know, the economy is how the world goes. So
Anybody else want to share what they need from businesses or people?
Well, rather than what I need, I guess my way of thinking about it is a lot of people are well-meaning, they want to be helpful, but there are times when people sort of try to impose their help on you, right? So I'm a blind person, I'm walking in the street, someone thinks, oh, I need help to cross the street, and they grab me, it's like, ask me, okay, if I need help, and then I'll tell you if I do. And I'm not opposed to asking for help, but don't impose it on me, okay? Yes, I may need help at some point, but I'd rather you ask me if you can be of help, and I'll tell you yes if I feel like I need help at that time. That sure. I mean, again, we all need help to do different things at different times, right? But ask the person, and this is pretty, I mean, a universal thing. Ask the person if you can be of help. And then they will tell you if they do, and if not, leave them alone. Even if you think they are going to sort of run into something, whatever it is, right? So the common thing is people offer help because they think you need it. Sure, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But what if I tell you, no, I don't, and I run into a ditch? It doesn't feel good to you, but still, remember, you offered your help. You asked me if I needed help. I said no. So at that point, you shouldn't feel that bad that I ran into a ditch, okay?
I agree.
But I'd rather that than you imposing the help on me.
Yeah. It's something that I think, not necessarily, again, like not a need, but kind of like a want for just the community in general. And this harkens back to talking about kind of visible versus invisible disabilities, but some sort of more universal understanding of invisible disabilities, and not of a, like, I think a little bit of the opposite of what you were just saying, Kobena, of like, you want people to stop giving you help and ask for it. And for me, I want to sometimes stop having to ask for help and wish that people would maybe offer it. And such as like on the bus, like me having to ask for a seat on the bus, things like that. When I look and present as a very, typical fit person, but I can't necessarily stand on the bus for the whole time. And that's challenging though, because like, how would anyone know?
No. Yes.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's very interesting. So if you were going to tell somebody how to ask you for help, so to speak, how would you go about doing that?
I think I think that's where it's complicated though, because I don't want to. I think it's where the fatigue sets in. Of I get so tired of always having to ask for things, and sometimes I wish that things were just more. I guess just more universal, more accessible.
That's the thing. So if it's universally accessible, then you wouldn't have to ask.
Right.
So I guess that could be the goal, okay? We should try and design the things we are doing, the services, whatever, try and offer them in a very universal way, in which case then everybody is able to use it, regardless of what their particular situation is. Because what you are talking about, constantly having to ask, for instance, if the disability is invisible, someone wouldn't know. But then, for me, one way to approach it is, if you ask, say, someone to let you sit, right? Say on the bus. Okay, you ask, can I please sit on the seat, whatever. I would like to think people would accept the fact that you are asking because you have the need for it, right? And not question why you are asking. On the buses, for instance, I know they designate some spots for people with disabilities. I don't remember. I think it's the first seat or something. Anyway, so if you Aylat, for instance, asks whoever is sitting there, can I please have this seat? I would like to think they will be sensible enough to know that you need it. That's why you're asking, right? And not make a fuss about it. But broadly speaking, I guess if things are universal and everybody understands what that means, hopefully that will help us.
One of the things, so people that know me know I've found a vacation spot that is universally accessible, and they are happy to see me and ask if they can stop a ride for me to get on with a big smile on their face. But that's an example of a place that's well thought out, universally accessible. I don't have to worry if somebody's going to make a face at me. I don't have to worry if they're going to stop a ride or there's going to be a bench transfer. And it's really good. You know how much money I've dropped there, Kobena? A lot of money.
Well, because you feel welcomed,
Yes.
so then you're willing to go there and spend your money.
Yep. And I think that's a big word, welcome. Do I feel welcome somewhere? And it cuts across a number of different groups. Another thing I'd really like to pick up from what you said, Kobena, is in getting help, in receiving help. I have a personal platform that I do not touch people with disabilities unless they ask to be touched. I don't, bodily integrity is such a big thing, but in asking for help, don't just come and grab me. And it's happened a lot. It's
And one thing I'll add to that point is your wheelchair or whatever your device is, that's an extension of you. So even though the person isn't necessarily touching Kelli physically, if they're touching her wheelchair or they're touching her crutches, that's an extension of her, and that's something that they need to kind of keep in mind as well.
So any other thoughts for people in the community on how to make things more accessible? What does accessibility mean to you? And from this conversation, to me, it means feeling welcome where I'm going in and feeling like, people aren't going to snicker at me, roll their eyes, or be annoyed that they might have to move over. But different people have different, there's a definition, Kobena, of universal accessibility, but really what does accessibility mean to you on a personal level?
Well, for me, it's situation dependent, right? So if it's about getting on the bus, right, then clearly the fact that there's nothing on my way to the bus, right? So I'm going to the T station. I mean, other things in my way is are the stairs clear? That's accessibility. I mean, the elevator doesn't work, right? I mean, if the elevator doesn't work, maybe for somebody like me, I can go up and down the stairs, but the next person cannot. Well, then the place is not accessible. So, and the fact that you have stairs and the elevator doesn't work shouldn't make you think the place is accessible because there's stairs. Stairs, it's not for everybody. All right. So for me, if it's about, say, getting to the bus to go to work and things not having things in my way is one way of thinking of accessibility. In other situations, it may be access to information, right? Documents, for instance, websites. You go to some websites and they're horrible, right? So in that case, the issues about, digital access, if you like, or inaccessibility, and the things I need to do to be able to get the information that is on that website. So generally speaking, yes, there's a universal definition, but sometimes it's also you apply to situations.
Right.
To pick up on that point, if somebody wants to if there's a business owner out there or an establishment or what have you that's out there and they want to make their business or their website more accessible, how would you recommend that they go about doing it? How do we get this conversation started? Because we've talked about, the things that are wrong, but how do we give those people the practical steps to make those changes that are needed?
If I may go. So there are organizations out there, there are people, individuals out there. For instance, when you talk about websites, there are people, organizations that provide services, including technical assistance, so that you have an understanding of what you need to do. So if it's a business and you have no clue where to start, you can reach out to some of these organizations. Again, I work for Mass Rehab. We have an assistive technology program there. We provide technical assistance. I can talk to the business and say, okay, if you are thinking of websites, you may want to get someone who actually understands how to build a website to make it accessible to work with. You may have your friend, your neighbor that, dabbles in web building and stuff. But if they don't have the grounding, they may build something that is not terribly accessible and it's not going to get you anywhere. So sometimes it may take a little investment of time and resources, right, to get the right people to advise you to do the right thing. Because again, if the website is not accessible, then people with disabilities are not going to come to your website, or they will come and not be able to get the information you are trying to offer, which means it does not translate into business for you.
Kobena, in particular, the time and the effort, a lot of the barriers, and this is for anybody, that people cite, what a world is built without people with disabilities in mind, as if they don't exist. And there's a whole historical reason for that. How do you talk to people and say this is the right thing to do, this is the legal thing to do, this is the law? And what do you say to people, to your point, James, to make that change? We have a whole infrastructure built that is not accessible.
Well, I think it really starts with conversations like this, because it goes back to that old saying, people don't know what they don't know. And if it's not necessarily in front of their face, so to speak, or their family member does not have a disability, or them themselves have a disability, it's just out of sight, out of mind. But when they stumble across a conversation like this, it gets the wheels of their mind turning, and I think that's really where it starts.
Yeah, and I guess most people mean well, so if you make them aware that there's an issue, more often than not, people are willing to make an effort to fix it. So yeah, there are a lot of good people out there, good, well-meaning people out there, and we just simply have to find ways to educate them, create awareness about where the issues are, the barriers, and hopefully help those that are willing to make change.
I would also say that, so just a little background about me is that I love Broadway musicals and stuff. And so the big thing about Broadway is that they're all very historic buildings, which means that they're kind of exempt from the ADA laws because of, historic architecture or things of that sort. And so something, that I would love to see in terms of accessibility and that feeling of like everyone can belong here is also, if you can't, retrofit an elevator or things like that, like where is there also like price accessibility of like, if I can only access the orchestra seating is there a way that there can be price accessibility? Because I would love to sit up all the way up top, but I can't get myself all the way up top. But one thing that I saw that was really awesome recently was a production with autistic characters completely played by autistic actors, and they had sensory areas within the theater, and I asked where there was an accessible bathroom so I didn't have to walk up and down stairs, and the atmosphere was just so welcoming compared to other atmospheres I had been to. So that shift of welcoming, and how can we make sure that everyone can exist in this space and feel comfortable in this space? How can people who don't like loud noises come to a theater and do things and enjoy it?
That is absolutely amazing. And we've talked about, like the things that are wrong or the things that need updating and changing and that sort of thing. But to feed into your point, what are some other things that you guys have seen of companies that are doing it right, or services that are doing it right, just to get that out there for people?
I have one, but I don't know if we're allowed to name it on TV. I am obsessed with Disney. 100%, wow. It's like, I don't care if you're a paid actor. I will drop my money there because I feel so good every time I go in there. And it's just a welcoming environment to everybody and everything. It's well thought out. There's plans, there's brochures, and I just don't even think about my disability when I'm in there. And that's really what I want to do. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to be able to spend my money, have a good time. Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, I think there are a few organizations, for instance, talking about the arts, there are a few organizations around the greater Boston area that do productions that with audio description for the blind, and sometimes they will even bring folks before the show them the costumes, describe and all that stuff. So those are ways of making their offerings accessible to folks who are blind, and I think they do it for other people with other disabilities too. I'm only mentioning the blind because that's the one that I've had first-hand experience with. So that's definitely commendable and something we should acknowledge. Yeah.
And I think for me, Uber Wave has been an absolute game changer. So for anybody that is unaware of what Uber Wave is, it is accessible vehicles, mostly Dodge Caravans, that are fully wheelchair accessible. Great. That you can go on, book your Uber just as if you would to get a sedan, and you can have it there in minutes. And a perk with the MBTA, if you are a ride customer, you can link your account and it comes right out of your ride account. And awesome. All the trips are direct, so you don't have to wait 2.5 hours most of the time.
Any examples of places?
I would say, again, theater goer here. The Opera House here in Boston has been really great. I know I've had some experiences there when I was undergoing chemotherapy, which again was a bit more of a visible disability at that point, but in the elevator they had a chair.
Oh wow.
And they let me sit down while I was in the elevator. So that was a good experience there.
That's great.
So we're about to wrap up, and we've meandered around a lot of topics. Yeah. I think disability is a wide-ranging topic. There's individual stories, individual experiences, individual needs. But is there anything you'd like to say to wrap it up, that people that are watching, what one thing you'd like them to know about your experience?
My experience is, people always ask me, well, James, if I have a question, how can I frame it? Because I don't want to offend you. And I always say, listen, if you think about it, ask yourself, say, hey, if somebody were to frame this question to my family member, would I be offended with how they asked it? And if the answer is no, then go ahead and ask it. And then even if somebody does say something that's a little bit offensive, I'll say, you know what, that doesn't offend me because I consider myself an educator. So at least in regards to my own disability, but I'll say, that didn't offend me, but here's how you would frame it for another person potentially, because this is where they could see it being offensive.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I would say is that if you don't ask, you wouldn't know the answer, right? So rather than get hung up on whether the question is good, is offensive, etc., I would say ask it, and if you really mean well, chances are that the other person, even if it could be interpreted as offensive, may not take it that way, right? But at the end of the day, you have to ask to find out what the answer is, because I'd rather you ask me to tell you what the right answer is than for you to make assumptions about me or whatever the case is. So yeah, that would be my advice. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask the question, because that's the only way you're going to learn the answer to whatever the question is.
I would say, I think just I would hope that in the future our communities can all be more welcoming to both physical and emotional and all types of disabilities, and that accessibility would look like welcoming both in all aspects of life, not just in physical accessibility, but in all different ways of accessibility. And I think in terms of myself, I would just, I'm a bit of a more private person with some people, but I'm also very open to speaking about my experiences as a young adult survivor. And I just want people to be able to understand what it's like to kind of go through having, going from being a kind of typical 20-year-old to then having to experience a life-changing disability, and then moving forward from it. So I like to share that as well.
Yeah, you've been great. I've seen some of the things you've done in Boston. And one of the things that I like to say, we've been talking about asking, and asking before you touch somebody, asking before you help, asking if you have a question. And one of the things Kobena said that I'd like to lift up is that sometimes it's really hard to understand somebody's intent. And I know deep in my bones when somebody really wants to know and is really curious, and I will take the time. I promise I will take the time to answer your question thoughtfully and work with you. But also, if I sense your intent is not good, don't be surprised if I just walk away from you, or I'm a little rude, or and sometimes it's hard to tell. But yeah, it's hard to measure, but intent is a big piece of it. Any last words?
I think I'm good. Thank you,
Kobena?
Kelli.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Lots,
thank
a
you.
lot more to
Thank you
talk
very much.
about if we wanted to. Healthcare. So again, thank you so much. I'd like to acknowledge James Norris. Is there anything that you'd like to say about yourself or your business?
If anybody would like to find out more, they can find us at handycapablefitness.com, and we are here to be a resource wherever possible.
Any last words, Kobena?
Well, because I work in assistive technology, I guess I would like to encourage anyone that's interested in learning more about assistive technology. You can go to the state's website. I work for the state, so you go to mass.gov, and then you look for MRC, and on that website, MRC for Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, and on that website we have information about all kinds of assistive technology services that we offer. And otherwise, yeah, you can find me around town, do my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any last words, Aylat?
I'd say just look into different rare diseases. They have Rare Disease Day every February 28th or 29th, depending on if it's a leap year. And just be open to new experiences and meeting new people.
And as an educator, I'm really looking at the young people coming up. Please, please, please take the time to expose young people with disabilities to a wide range of experiences. Get them out working, because everybody can work and should have the opportunity to try. And I really want to see people's lives be bigger and more open and not smaller. So please be welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you.